soothing sounds of Joey Cleveland getting us ready to talk all about Travers Day at Saratoga. Very excited to have a conversation with my good friend Matt DeSantis here, who's been doing a fantastic job working over there for the NYRA and NYRA bets. Matty, buddy, what a big day ahead. 5 grade ones. So let's talk all about the all grade one pick 5 races 9 through 13. How's everything going on your end, my friend?
Oh, it's going great, Gino. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to talk about this sequence of 5. Like you said, 5 straight grade 1 races. It's a fun sequence to play. I'm excited to talk about it. Some of the best horses we have in the sport right now. And I think really compelling races, particularly the last 2 legs, I think are just really, you could go in so many different directions and we'll get there. But man, it's been great. And it's going to be a beautiful week of weather up here in Saratoga.
The Travers is really strong. It's competitive. That's exactly what you want. You have some of the big names, and it's also a good betting race because it can
Yeah.
go in a bunch of different directions. That'll be race 13 on Saturday. So we'll talk all about the races leading up to that, races 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 on a Saturday. Travers Stakes Day at Saratoga. Remember, you can get anything you need at drf.com. Past performances, they have Saturday betting strategies available for you. Clocker reports every racing day, DRF picks. So lots of help. You can get to the YouTube channel. You can get help there. And Maddie and I are going to do our best to lead you in the right direction where we get started. Matt is in race number 9. So the first of the pick 5, not the best of the betting races here, but we're going to get to see some really nice horses, and we get to see Appleby, who just has been incredible over the last few years when sending horses in the U.S. He's hitting at over 30% this year at the meet at Saratoga, over that 38% with a couple wins, and he has such a strong hand here in the Sword Dancer to kick this off in a small field, not only with Silver Knot, who's become like the top of the turf marathon division, and he's just been 3 for 3 this year, a brand new horse at 4, like so good. He also has Measured Time, who's 6 for 8 with the second. The only time he hasn't been in the money, he was 4th in the Dubai World Cup, beating a length and a quarter in the Dubai Turf on Dubai World Cup night. So just a really nice horse here. I guess just discussing the two of them, Measured Time is not as proven going long. He only has 1 race going 1.5 miles. That was on the synthetic. So if you want to compare and contrast the two, Silver Knot is just a little bit more proven at these longer distances, but 2 very nice horses. And what makes it even more difficult, they're the 2 quickest horses in the field by far. If like there's not really a whole lot of other pace in here besides those 2.
Yeah, you're right. It's a fascinating race in that, particularly Silver Knot, you really hit the nail on the head, has taken such a great step forward from 3 to 4, setting that track record last time out in the Bowling Green, going 1.3 miles and doing it without even really being asked for his best at any point as well. And what makes Silver Knot so impressive is that he's such a handy horse. He can sit a little further back. He can go right to the lead as he did in the Bowling Green. And he set pretty legitimate fractions too. It wasn't as if he was trying to crawl up front and reserve something for the end. He was going all out. It seems like Flavian Pratt has a great handle for this horse. But what makes Measured Time dangerous, and I agree with you about, the fact that this is a horse that is not proven really at 1.5 miles or over that distance as well, is, Charlie Appleby is flying William Buick over here. And that is usually a telltale sign if one of Appleby's horses is alive. And the fact that he's not going to, maybe a jockey like Manny Franco, or maybe trying to get somebody like Tyler Gaffleone, who will sometimes ride for him, to get Buick to come over to ride Measured Time, I think tells you just how seriously they consider this horse's chances. Those 2 are, without a doubt, the 2 horses to beat in this race. Measured Time coming off that impressive win in the Grade 1 Manhattan last time out during Belmont Stakes Racing Festival weekend up here. But I think from a betting standpoint, it presents a bit of a conundrum because you don't want to use both of these horses to kick off your pick 5 ticket.
Because there's not going to be a lot of separation, right? You want to,
exactly. You got a single. You got to choose one.
Yep. Yeah.
And kind of take a stand a little bit against the other.
I think so too. Worth mentioning at least Soldier Rising, who is a 9-time stakes runner-up. and four straight graded stakes races where he's been second. He's never won a stakes race. He's 0 for his last 11, but he's earned $1.35 million. He's just
Yeah.
some nice horses, and a lot of it has to do with his running style. He
Yeah.
he will catch. We're going to talk about Sierra Leone in a few minutes, and when you just have a deeper running style like this, you're always going to be in a field with a couple horses that are going to get better trips than you. They may not even be as good as you. They just are going to get better trips and get an advantage on you a lot of the time. That's the problem with a horse like Soldier Rising in this field, because if the 2 and the 4 don't go right at each other, it makes it hard to open this up for anyone else. I couldn't get to anyone else. I think your approach is just correct. And I guess for me, I would probably lean towards the horse who has more of the proven advantage going long. And he's also shown me he can sit off a little bit too. So if Measure Time wants to go, Silver Knot showed in the Man of War, he can sit a few lengths off and be fine doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right about Soldier Rising. Just such a hard trying horse. And, he gives himself too much to do a lot of times coming from the back of the pack. But listen, I'd love to own a horse that earned $1.3 million. So he's an honest horse, and he's one I'd include in my verticals. If you're trying to play this vertically, maybe you just go straight like Silver Knot, Soldier Rising Exacta or something like that. If you decide you want to fade Measured Time because of the distance limitations, which I think are legitimate. And so, he's the next most logical horse to mention behind those top 2. And like I said, if you're playing this as a pick sequence, personally, I would just kind of double down on either the 2 or the 4. Like you, I'd lean toward that 4 Silver Knot. I just think that horse has taken such a huge step forward and is so proven at this distance, and really handles this turf course incredibly well. And like I said, Pratt just seems to have fit this horse like a glove. So really, really impressive runner. And he's also been over here the whole time, continued training over here, and it really has kind of acclimated himself to this environment.
Yeah, I think that's the direction we're going to go here. The Sword Dancer, named for the Hall of Famer, the 1959 Horse of the Year, Sword Dancer. So looks like it'll be probably a chalky start to this pick 5 one way or the other if you take the stand, or maybe you use them both because you have a really big, strong opinion on a bigger horse later, but I just don't think that's the right approach. I think recommending, like if I were to say, I would do the exact same thing as Matt. I think you pick one of these 2 horses and that's the one that you start out your pick 5 with. I would lean Silver Knot here, who's trying to go 4 in a row, and that maturity at 4, going a little bit longer. Few things have changed for him, but he's been a brand new horse, and Pratt has been aboard in all 3 of those. Maddie, let's move to the Ballerina right next door. This is race number 10. And in all of these races, we're going to see some really nice horses that are towards the very tip top of their division. The very same case can be said here with Vava, who is right at the top of the filly and mare sprint division. She has won 4 of her last 5. She's defeated some of the main rivals in here, like Positano, Sunset, and Society, who she'll have to face here along with a couple others. She is a grade 1 winner. She's been even better this year than she was last year. So she's just a really nice horse, and you can very easily go back and just eliminate the races where they win a little bit longer. They were trying to see if she was maybe a Kentucky Oaks filly in the Intappable and in the Rachel Alexandra last year, just a little farther than where she wanted. Soon as they cut her back, she's been awesome.
Yeah, she really has. Cherie's done a great job handling this horse, and Irad has done a great job the last several times out. And she has that sort of versatility. She can sit mid-pack. She can sit off the pace. She can be right up on the pace as well. So as she was in the Chicago last time out at Churchill Downs, and she's really tough at this 7 furlong distance. I think that's what really differentiates her from so many others who I think maybe at 6 furlongs could get the best of her. But I think at 7, she's almost unbeatable at this distance. I will say the horse that is intriguing to me and that I might be willing to take a little bit of a shot against the even money favorite is the number 5 Scylla for Bill Mott. And this is a horse that has phenomenal pedigree, sired by Tappet, dam his closed hatches, and is the full sibling to both Tacitus and Batten Down, who we're going to talk about in a couple minutes in the Travers. And I think the assumption was this horse was going to want all the distance and really like distance. Obviously, won the grade 2 Fleur de Lis at 9 furlongs, went out west, out in your neck of the woods, and ran second to Adair Manor last time out. This is an interesting move. Bill Mott comes back on relatively short rest, cuts the horse back, and you don't see Bill Mott do this very often. He doesn't place a horse in a spot that he doesn't think they can be successful. And when you go back and look, she is undefeated in one-turn races, and you could argue that her one-turn races at Churchill and Keeneland are her best races she's ever run. So, maybe she is more of a 7-furlong sprinter at the end of the day. And 7-2, it's an interesting price and maybe an interesting way if you're going to try to beat Fava to go to a horse like Scylla, who is unproven, admittedly, but is certainly a grade 2 winner on her own right.
So her 3 losses, she's 5 for 8. She's been beat 3 times. These are the 3 horses who beat her. One of them's named Beth's Dream. We actually just saw Beth's Dream come back and win at Gulfstream Park over the weekend.
Yeah.
Win the sheer drama. She's now won 4 in a row. She's earned really nice middle of the 90s buyer speed figures in all of those victories. This is a horse who just loves to win races. So that was one of the times that Scylla got beat. The other 2 times came to Raging Sea, who we just saw win the Chuvy. Raging Sea has won 4 of her last 5 races. She is a very, very nice horse and a multiple graded stakes winner. And then the 3rd loss came most recently winning the Clement Hirsch to a horse named Adair Manor, who I got to say, Adair Manor is actually better than she's ever been right now. She didn't used to want to rate at all. Like, she was just not the type of horse that would sit off and pass horses. She had that, the Clement Hirsch, she probably should have lost that race, but she's just in incredible form right now. She's won 3 in a row, and she's right towards the tip top of the division. So when you're looking at the horses who have defeated Scylla, you're looking at really nice horses who were really, really sharp when Scylla lost to them. So I completely agree with you. I think she's a player. Like, this is one of those races where I respect the heck out of the favorite, Vava, but I do think there are a couple other intriguing horses based on the prices they will be, right? Vava's definitely the most likely winner of this race, but if you're going to get 3.5 to 1 or 4 to 1 on some of these others, the real key to the race is, like, Money's Gold is entered on Friday also, right? You and I are talking on Wednesday. Money's Gold is entered on Friday. If she's not in this race, I could start to throw in Society also in some of the pick 4s and pick 5s, because Society, when defeated by Vava in the Chicago, that was just Society's first start back since the Breeders' Cup in November. And Vava had the benefit of a couple races already off the bench to just be a lot more fit. And honestly, that kind of looked at how the race was. Society got out front. When Vava loomed up next to her, she actually tried a little bit early on in the stretch to battle back, but she just wasn't fit enough. So if Money's Gold isn't in the race, then I'm going to throw in Society, I think, as well, because I could see her just being a little sharper now with that race.
Yeah,
her.
I agree with that. The key is absolutely Money's Gold, because if Money's Gold isn't in the race, then there's really nobody else who's going to apply much pressure. I don't think a seed is fast enough to do that.
Me neither.
And I don't think Scylla has the interest in doing that at all.
And Vava doesn't really want to do that much either. Like,
no,
not too much more than she did last time. Like, he doesn't want to have to go after her more than that.
100%. And I think you have Society being much more fit at this point. And like you said, that was the first race back, that Chicago, first race back in 8 months from the Breeders' Cup. So yeah, she's dangerous if she is going to be lone speed up on the front end. And, as Steve's going to get that horse ready to go, we know that. And I think you're absolutely right that if the 8 scratches, then suddenly the 4, and I might do something like, not use Vava at all and try to go 4-5 or something like that.
Absolutely.
If Money's Gold scratches and
Completely
go, okay,
agree.
let's see if I can catch the next most 2 logical winners in this race.
Yep. Fun price horse to include, at least in some underneath spots. A horse that I had liked, Matt, when you and I were doing a lot of our live streams together a couple years ago, we talked about Positano Sunset a few times because she had ability. Then she was in a couple of tough spots. She actually beat Vava back in April of 2023. And then she wasn't able to really kind of put it all together last year, but she was off from August of 2023 to April of 2024. So you could see maybe she just needed a couple races to kind of get back into form. She had a slow start on May 27th in the winning colors. She ran a lot better in the Chicago. She wasn't that far behind Vava, and she actually finished in front of Society that day. She could be at least under exotics horses. Like if people are looking at this race like we are, and most of them are looking at the logical shorter price horses, and if you're trying to find someone who can spice things up, I could absolutely see her passing some horses late and hitting the board, finishing third or fourth and getting in the money.
100%. It's so funny. I thought of you actually when I was handicapping this race because of everything you said. We talked about her quite a bit down at Gulfstream Park back when we used to do some live streams together. And, she's a really good horse. I really liked her actually coming off the bench in that Roxalana. I thought she had a kind of a live shot, and she really made up some ground in that race. And I thought ran a pretty good fourth off the bench. And you're right, step slow in the winning colors, maybe just not her race, but ran a really good one last time out. I think, again, she's one I have more confidence in her if money's gold's in the race, because I know then there's going to be more pace for her to run into. And I think some of these horses are really going to tire, particularly going 7 furlongs. But she's one I'm absolutely using underneath if I'm playing this exactas trifectas, because at 15-1, you're getting a really good value on a horse who is clearly feeling good, as an evidence by just firing off that 47 flat 4 furlong bullet on August 17th. So she might just be hitting her best form after that long way off.
So look at the grade 1 Ballerina. Let's continue on. The middle part of this pick 5 sequence is the grade 1 Forego, named for the Hall of Famer, 3-time horse of the year, Forego. Looking at this race, Maddie, horses that will take some money. The one Gun Pilot coming off of a big grade 1 win a couple starts back. Baby Yoda, always super popular, kind of an enigma of a horse. Mulligan's the horse
Yes.
to beat, though. He's won 3 in a row. He's kind of stepping up nicely. He's gotten pretty soft trips in those wins, but he's the horse that's the now horse. It's funny, we were talking about Silver Knot a little earlier. Looks similar just on the dirt kind of to this horse, who they just sort of figured things out as a 4-year-old now. He sits a little bit off. He's kind of quick, but he's been really good keeping him right between 6 and 7 furlongs here. So he's the one to beat. I'll say with Gun Pilot a little too, before I hand it off to you, the grade 1 Churchill Downs that he won, which kind of stands out from his form. When you start to look back at the race now, how it's played since then, the runner-up, Hear Me Song, came back and was 4th in the Aristides, and then had to go win a lot softer kind of a race at Ellis Park on July the 21st. The 3rd place finisher, Zozos, he did not run well in either of his next couple of starts, just not even close. Ray's Kane, he came back and ran 3rd and 4th in his next 2 starts. The 5th place finisher, Mr. Wireless, he came back and ran 2nd and 6th in his next 2 starts. Tejano Twist came back out of that race and ran 3rd and 4th in his next 2 starts. Trackmate came back and ran 4th and 4th in his next 2 starts. Minnesota Ready did actually come back and win his next start, but it was over at Lone Star in a softer spot. So we talk about key races sometimes. You can actually have like negative key races or like backwards key races where I don't know how strong that grade 1 is. My only counter to myself, Matt, would be I don't know how strong this grade 1 is.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's funny. I'm not a big fan of Gun Pilot in this spot for the reasons you outlined. You saw a little bit of a regression in that True North based off of the previous effort, which was a career best for him in that Churchill Downs. And like you said, wasn't the strongest field. And I'll be honest, that True North probably really wasn't the strongest field either. And, you look at this and, certainly Mulligan, it does make a lot of sense. And Rudy Brissett's got a real nice horse here. And he's got another really nice one in the next race we'll talk about. But, this is still, it's sometimes a horse that's hard to trust because that Nehrud that he won last time out was also not the toughest field. I mean, you look at that group and you're a Coastal Mission, 90% Maddie, Ever So Mischievous Prevalence. Okay, I mean, those are all good horses, but they're, they're not grade ones. And so it's really hard to kind of get too excited about that. I ultimately landed on two horses at a little bit more of a price, not a huge, crazy price, but I really am interested in the 5 Run Classic and the 8 Cagliostro. Those
Yep,
are the two that I'm fascinated
those
by.
are my two, 5-8. Yeah,
That's funny.
they're the playable horses. They feel like
I
at the
think
prices
so.
they may be going 7 furlongs. And just keep in mind what we're saying when, if you look at them at first glance and maybe you're worried because you don't see, for a horse like Cagliostro, a bunch of grade 1 races in the form. I don't think you should be all that worried about it because this doesn't feel as much like a true grade 1. And then for Run Classic in particular, I very much like this guy. But go ahead, talk to us about Run Classic and then Cagliostro.
Yeah, so Run Classic for Jose D'Angelo's second start back from that international trip where, he ran in the grade 1 Golden Shaheen against just a dynamite field and, came back from that and ran second last time out down at Gulfstream Park. But again, you and I have talked about this a lot. You typically, at least I think I do, you typically throw out the first race coming back from overseas like that. He still ran a good number. He ran a 97 buyer. He's been very consistent in that regard. Jose D'Angelo is a trainer I really like a lot. Gets Javier Castellano up, who was the jockey 3 races back when he won down at Gulfstream Park in stakes competition. He's got, again, kind of a handy running style. He can sit mid-pack. He doesn't need to be too far off the pace. I think he should appreciate the 7 furlong distance. He's 2 for 3 winning at that distance. I just think he's a horse on the come up, and he's a horse that you can get a little bit of a price on. And like I said, at 5-1, second start back from that international trip, I think he's a very playable horse in this spot. And then Cagliostro for Cherie DeVoe, I've always liked this horse. I've liked this horse going back to before the Louisiana Derby last year. And I just thought, he's run against, you make a great point, Gino, that he's run not many graded stakes races, no grade 1s, but you look at the horses he's run against nice horses his whole career, whether going back to even before he was in Graded Stakes Company, running like Dennington and Tappet Shoes, Kings Barnes, Disarm, Scotland, Verifying, Il Miracolo, Highland Falls. He's running at Tumbarumba, Raised Cane. He's running against good horses. And, he's another one. I actually like the cutback a little bit coming off that win in the hand shin, going 1 turn at Churchill. I think Cherie realizes maybe this is a horse that's best at 1 turn. I think the blinkers getting added a few starts back definitely helps. And I like this one quite a bit with Jose Ortiz back on board.
Yeah, those are my two. From the outside with Cagliostro, just cutting back a little bit should give him so much more punch late, and I think he's quick enough to keep up with this group early on. He showed that last time when they went faster. I like the draw for him as well. So lots of positives. I mean, if you eliminate the race at Remington going 1 mile and 1/8 and then the 1 mile and 3/16 race in the Louisiana Derby, then look at the form. It's just nothing that's bad. And everything makes sense. It's all really solid. Then Run Classic, he's a horse who's always just been about a 7 furlong horse. I liked him a lot, and I tried to get him more distance a few times. I really did. Like, I played him in some of these races when he was going a little bit longer in the the Louisiana Derby early in his career, and then after a long layoff when he came back in the Louisiana in the Mine Shaft, then they cut him back, and he's just much better going 7 furlongs. Some of those 7 furlongs races just jump off the page. He can win at 6 furlongs like he did in the Gulfstream Park Sprint earlier this year when they go fast enough if the race sets up for him. But the way he comes in just with the pattern, took a shot in Dubai. Okay, now you come back, you get the first race off the bench, you shake the rust off, and that was too short for him anyways. He hooked a pretty sharp horse there, and also in that race behind him were Sibelius, who is a very classy horse, a former Golden Shaheen winner and a grade 1 winner, and also Octane, who's a graded stakes winner. So that was not an easy group either. Those are my top 2 from a gambling standpoint. I thought the 6 is probably the horse to beat, but he makes a lot of sense. He just feels like at his price, he's way too short for me to be excited about.
Yeah, I hear you. And listen, he's training well, and Rudy has had Rudy Brissett's had some good success this summer with him and up here in Saratoga in general. And I think what is so interesting about him is I had some questions about him switching off Lasix last time out, and he answered those questions. He ran a career best 102 buyer, but again, speed favoring track, field that didn't really feel like a grade two, felt more like a grade three listed stakes level field. And this is going to be a little bit more of a test. Admittedly, I don't think he hooked the toughest field in the world
No,
here.
it's a good spot.
But
really
it's
good
still
spot.
tough. Yeah, it is. It is. But I still will be willing to play against him in certain spots.
So one other price horse I want to mention, especially if you're trying to play against Mulligan, I think Anchor is a little bit interesting, in particular because the way where he's drawn. If you really isolate this horse's form, he loves being drawn to the outside like this because he wants to sit just off of horses. In fact, if you look at his last 3 victories, he was in post 4 in a field of 4. He was in post 9 in a field of 10, and he was in post 6 in a field of 6. And he got similar trips in all of them. And when we're talking about, you look at his races and you don't see a bunch of grade 1s or a bunch of graded stakes races on the page. Well, he actually beat a horse named Close the Game Sugar, who then came back and beat him a couple times. But that horse was second in the Bing Crosby behind the Chosen Vron recently. And some of those races at Churchill, they're not graded stakes races, but they're expensive sprint races that are $250,000. So the pretty good horses running them. The top sprinters of the circuit still run in those races. So if you're spreading out and using some prices in here, I'm fine with throwing him in. We actually previewed this race on the DRF YouTube earlier, and David Aragona likes Anchor a little bit in this spot. And I don't have many knocks. Like if you eliminate the June 1st race too, then all of a sudden he doesn't have a whole lot of bad recent races.
He doesn't. And he picks up by Rad Ortiz Jr., who, listen, he's, I know we give Mike Smith the moniker Big Money Mike, but, on Saturdays, Irad Ortiz Jr. puts on his riding shoes and starts showing everybody who's the top rider for a reason. And he's got Phil Bauer as a trainer. He's had an incredibly successful meet up here at Saratoga. So, that's a good combination at 12-1. I agree with you. I think that's an interesting horse. And it's funny, you talked to David already. I'm actually going to talk to David for a separate show that I'm doing later this week. So I look forward to hearing him talk about Angor now as well.
Very sharp David Aragona, who makes the morning line odds for all the NYRA tracks. You see his great work on drf.com, Timeform US stuff. I think we didn't talk much about Baby Yoda. I've never been able to get a feel for him ever. He was 3 for 4 to start his career. He earned that 114 buyer. He has buyer speed figures of 114, 102, and 98 at Saratoga. So he obviously likes Saratoga quite a bit. But after that really good start to his career, he has not been consistent. In fact, the grade 2 True North was his first stakes win ever in 10 tries in stakes.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's a hard horse to figure out. And Mott has generally, when he turns in a bad effort, cuts him back to something else. I mean, go back, look at like 2 years ago when he runs in the Forego. And then what's he do? Mott immediately goes and runs him against Optional Claiming Company to get his confidence back. And so Mott has done that repeatedly, kind of, okay, let's ease him back to some softer spots. But yeah, this horse does seem to really like Saratoga quite a bit. Lost to some very good horses in Nakatomi, Skelly, and Twisted Ride last time out. You do wonder if that 102 buyer, we saw a lot of horses run that Saratoga Belmont racing weekend that have come back with slower figures next time out. And you do wonder if he just freaked a little bit in that race, and maybe that the 102 buyer is a bit of an anomaly. I mean, you're getting 8-1, but I don't know if you'll get 8-1 come post time because people love throwing their money at this horse. And he is a popular local horse to support, but it's hard for me to see him get the right trip and get the right setup in this race. And again, I think he's just facing slightly tougher than what he can typically beat.
Yeah, I believe it is set for 2026, the Mandalorian and Grogu movie for all of you Star Wars fans out there. But Baby Yoda, it comes down to price with a horse like this. Like if he is 8-1, okay, I could throw him in a pick 5. If he's half of that, then like that's where I'm like, if he's 4-1 ish, like I'm gonna need more than that because he's just been
100%.
So hard to trust. Let's keep rolling through this really, really good pick 5 sequence, all grade 1s. And we jump into the Allen Jerkins, perhaps the most contentious race of the sequence. Just a really, really good one, top to bottom in here. You have the number 8, Bookham Dano. It's been a very nice sprinter. You look at a couple of his losses. He's only been beat twice. One of them to Forever Young, who was 3rd in the Kentucky Derby and is a very good horse. From the inside out, world record is quick. Speakeasy was like a buzz horse, and he was slated to run in the Fountain of Youth, and then he got hurt, and he had to miss a bunch of time, and he showed back up with a big victory. Domestic Product, from after the Tampa Bay Derby, he was one of the buzzier horses when it comes to training, like always training great in the mornings, outworking other horses. He was just a cut below a lot of the best on speed figures, and then boom, he finally got his big speed figure race in the Dwyer that stamped him as a horse who can compete with other fast horses. Prince of Monaco is a grade 1 winner from last year, and he was pretty good in the Woody Stevens, closing from way out of it. Timberlake gets the cutback that a lot of people were hoping for. He would make a lot of sense in here. And then you know what? Once you start going through this field, Matt, for this type of a 7 furlong sprint race with this quality of horses, there isn't that much early speed in this race that you would expect for 11 horses in this type of a race. So maybe a horse like the outside runner can be competitive if he's able to sneak away from this group. I was really having a good time handicapping this race. There are a lot of ways you can go.
100%. This is, with all due respect to the Travers, this is my favorite race on the card, and it's not even close. This is as good of a betting field and as good of a race, in my opinion, that you'll see perhaps until the Breeders' Cup. It's just that good. I'm not saying these horses are all Breeders' Cup caliber horses, but this is an 11-horse field, and you could make a legitimate case, I think, for 9 of them. And, this is from a, I think one of the things you and I have been talking to this point, kind of staying a little bit more, we're not singling maybe every single leg, but we're going a little skinny. And this is the race where you spread, because if you have a strong opinion, good for you, because it's a hard one to do. I agree with you about the speed. The speed's on the inside and the outside. It's world record, and it's Little Knee on the outside. And we should say about Little Knee, who's now with Mark Casse, maybe just for this race, as Eddie Owens Jr. Was his trainer down in New Jersey. But Cassie's had a phenomenal summer up here in Saratoga. This horse almost beat Bookham Dano last time out. I was incredibly impressed by the number 1 horse, World Record, when he won the Amsterdam. The addition of blinkers seemed to make all the difference. This horse broke like a rocket from the inside rail and just never looked back. And I think he's a really legitimate horse to consider at 8-1.
I think you got to throw he's on my pick 5s because of the breaking from the rail. He was such a rocket last time, and it's kind of tricky when it looks like those are the 2 definite speed horses, right? And then anyone else is like, I don't know. They don't really want to be on the lead. And probably with these 2, like Speakeasy, sure, he could be pressing the pace a little bit. And horse like Vetriano doesn't have to be too far out of it if he wants. And Otto the Conqueror, I would imagine, though, those are the 2. And what's scary as a gambler is when there feels like there's only 2, if one of them breaks slowly and the other one gets out front, like they're both pretty quality horses too. So that's just a tricky way to start from a pace standpoint. And then you just get into how competitive and contentious it is. Top to bottom.
It is. And perhaps what we should do is simply follow Flavien Prat, because this is one of the more intriguing angles in this race. The last race out, Flavien Prat rode the following horses: World Record, who he rode to a win in the Amsterdam. He also rode last time out Prince of Monaco to a 2nd place effort in the Woody Stevens for Bob Baffert. He rode Timberlake in the Haskell and the Arkansas Derby before that for Brad Cox. And then, oh, by the way, he ended up on the number 3 Domestic Product, who he rode last time out to win the Dwyer. So Flavien Prat likely had his choice of 4 horses. And out of those 4, who are all very, very good horses, he chose Domestic Product. That might be the key to certainly his opinion on this race. We'll see if that's right. But obviously Domestic Product looked to be the goods when he won that Dwyer last time out, and a horse that just looks so much more comfortable traveling one turn than going two turns. And you're right, was a buzzy horse, leading into the Kentucky Derby, and really feels like Chad got this horse doing exactly what he wants to do right now.
Yeah, I've no knocks. He's got to be on my pick five too. Like the inside horses, I thought are all very live, continuing to move through the field. I mean, like it's hard to knock Prince of Monaco or Timberlake
Oh
in
yeah,
this spot, right? I
yeah,
mean, like I think I probably maybe I'll on top some other pricier horses a little bit more, but as far as leaving these horses out of an exotics ticket, it would be scary to do so because Prince of Monaco seems like the races going less than a mile are great for him. And for Timberlake, he's not been bad in his last couple starts. He may have gotten a lot out of that Haskell race. He had not run since March, and this could be a really nice turn back for him.
yeah. And this was a turnback that was always rumored and talked about after that Arkansas Derby. Brad Cox even came out and said, "I think we're going to cut him back." And then, it was surprising to see him entered in the Haskell off the bench. To be entered in that tough of a spot, going a mile and an eighth. And listen, he got his nose in front of Dornick, but a lot of horses get their nose in front of Dornick. Getting past him all the way is the tough part. He ultimately, flattened out a little bit and finished third. But I agree with you. That was an informative race to, have him come back from, that long of a layoff and still run pretty well. Now he's got his conditioning to him, and Cox is finally doing what I think he really wants to do with this horse, which is sprint him. And he could be pretty dangerous at a nice price at 5-1. And he's got the stamina, and Florent Giroux's back aboard. He rode him early in his career, so very comfortable at that. And he obviously has a win going one turn as well in the Grade 1 Champagne at Belmont at Aqueduct. So he's a dangerous horse. Broke his maiden at 7 furlongs as well and did it impressively over a nice little field actually. So I think he's one. He'd need to move forward from a buyer speed figure standpoint, but I do think you could see a similar jump from him that you saw from Domestic Product last time out, that once he gets to do what he wants to do, suddenly he becomes a much faster horse overall.
Yeah, and when you just watch him visually, like he really doesn't want to sit all that much going longer. He'll be able to sit here because he's just not as fast.
Yeah.
He's just not as fast as some of the others that are really, really fast. So he'll be able to do that where he's just kind of running loose and still has some finish in him. I just feel like this is going to be perfect for Timberlake. It's tough to knock what Otto the Conqueror's done, but he'll have to kind of prove it against a tougher group like this. But he did outfinish world record last time out. Bookham Dano's really nice, Matt. I mean, he's run back-to-back triple-digit buyer speed figures now.
Yeah, he's such a cool horse. New Jersey bred, sired by Buchero, which we're thrilled to have up here now as a New York sire. And he is one who, he ran his eyeballs out in that Saudi Derby, nearly beat Forever Young in that race. We saw, of course, Forever Young come back to run third in the Kentucky Derby by just a nose, and then came back and won that Woody Stevens just so impressively. Last time out, I know people are going to look at that and go, how does he almost lose that 4-horse race against Little Knee? First of all, Little Knee might be better than people gave him credit for.
Yes.
And he's a very, very good horse. Second, Little Knee got brave up front too. And I'm not going to put all the blame on the jockey for this, but I do think for a 4-horse field, that horse managed to find problems in pretty much every step of the way. And you and I have watched enough races to know that when a horse gets brave up front, anything's possible, and it gets really hard to start tracking them down. And I think Little Knee just got really brave up front, and it took every ounce of Bookham Dano's talent to win that race. But it came back incredibly strong with the 101. So, Yes, he barely won, but it was right there. And listen, he's a really tough horse to exclude off your tickets too at 7-2. So,
third start of the form cycle coming off the long layoff. His races are spaced very well. Like he doesn't need to be quite as far back, I think, as the last two races. I feel like he can be a little more involved, like a little more mid-pack. And they did say that he will run in this race and not the race at Charlestown on Friday, which he's cross-entered in. So it's even the horses who are bigger prices, like Jefferson Street got well defeated by world record, but you can see that was a race where world record got clear. And if there is more pace in this race and it's a little more contentious of an early pace, then Jefferson Street could actually get in the mix here. Reynolds Channel is a horse who's been stepping forward and got his big win last time out. It is as good of a race as you'll find anywhere this weekend. If I gave you $20 and said you had to bet it on only one horse in the race based off of their morning line odds and you could lock it in, we've got the exchange here for this one race for your $20. Who would you play?
That's a really good question. Yeah, that's a really good question. I do, something, I'm going to go with a horse or a trainer I usually don't go with. I would go with world record, actually.
Yeah.
I really, really like this horse. And I think if you could promise me 8-1, I would absolutely bet that horse. I really, really like him. I think there's a ton of upside with him.
I had 2, 3, 1 as my top three. The three inside down the inside. So it would be one of those horses. I have no problem with world record. I think I've been a fan of Speakeasy, so I'm very interested to see him against a group like this and see where he does stack up. And then domestic product, to me, he's like right there with Bookham Dano as like the horses to beat.
Yeah. No, I think, and what we haven't really talked much about Speakeasy, but this is an aggressive placement for Todd Pletcher. And that tells you his opinion of the horse. I mean, to go from running against, this is his third career start. The horse runs in January, was entered in the Fountain of Youth based upon that effort and scratched out of that race, had a little bit of a setback, came back last month, wins an N1X allowance up
and
here.
in a totally different way.
Work for it a little bit.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Not just like on the lead like he was in his debut. Had to close from little flat-footed to start and then totally different dimension. So he might be a really nice horse.
He might be. And the fact that Todd's putting him straight into a grade 1 when he doesn't have to. I mean, there's other races he could put him in, other sprints he could put him in up here. And the fact he's putting him here tells you everything you need to know about how confident he is. And the fact Irad stays aboard, he's alive, I think, at 8-1 as well.
Really challenging race, a fun race for the bettors. The 12th on Saturday at Saratoga as we move to race number 13. Saturday, August the 24th. Got to give a shout out to my sister, Chanel. It's going to be her birthday. She's a couple years younger than me. So she had to put up with the older brother throughout her entire life, singing annoyingly in the car, driving to school, and like just making her life miserable. So hope Chanel has a nice birthday on Saturday. She's had some cool jobs. I've been envious of her. She worked for the athletic department for USC and now works for the Dodgers in the front office.
Oh wow!
So she's just
pretty awesome.
Like had some really cool experiences, and just been a part of like some. She got into a lot of cool games, and so shout out to my sister. Happy birthday there. Speaking of the Phillies, we have a Philly facing the boys here in the Travers, and we get Torpedo Anna, who has won 4 races in a row, 4 for 4 this year. She has crushed all of the Phillies in her division. The 3-year-old filly, she won the Oaks. She's the best. So her connections say, let's take a shot against the boys. And when trainer Kenny McPeak also has Mystic Dan, who had to be sidelined and wasn't able to make this race. I think that probably made the decision a tad bit easier to say, you know what? We definitely won't have to face Mystic Dan. Let's throw her in here. She does get a kind of tricky draw down on the inside, and I'm curious what they'll do tactically because, I mean, she wants to be pretty close. That Unmatched Wisdom wants to be pretty close. I think maybe he can sit off a little bit, but he's only showed that he wants to be close up. Batten Down, I actually think he's going to try to get the lead in here because he was a little flat-footed. He kind of didn't have the best of trips, and his 2 big wins came when he was cruising on the front end. I feel like they're going to get aggressive with him. We know where Dornick wants to be, and we know where Fierceness wants to be. There might be 5 horses in here kind of jockeying for a position early, right, Maddie?
I agree. It's going to be a fast pace in this one, and it's interesting. Brian Hernandez Jr., if he can get Torpedo Anna out of the gate, then I think if you gave him Truth Serum right now and said, where would you like her sitting? I think the answer is they really hope that Dornick and Fierceness may be crossing clear of the field, and she can sit that pocket trip sitting third behind the 2 of them and just save all the ground on the inside rail. Not all that dissimilar to how Brian won the Kentucky Derby with Mystic Dan, as you mentioned. And so it is a tricky spot. She's going to need to break well. She really hopped up and lunged out of the gate last time out. So there were some gate issues. I think it's notable that Kenny McPeak gave her a gate work and had her working out of the gate a little bit up over at the Oklahoma track in between her official workouts leading up to this race. So she's, it's not 100% that she's going to get out of the gate cleanly, but if she does, at least to her immediate outside, she has Sierra Leone, who's not particularly fast. So
good point.
She doesn't have somebody breathing down her neck right next to her, which is, I think, helpful. But I agree with you about Unmatched Wisdom. He can rate a little bit, but I mean, you really do run into some issues with how much do you really want to try to rate him in this spot. I agree with you about batting down. Listen, he's got to go. That's his only way to win at this point in his career. He's never
got pinned
do anything else.
A little bit by fierceness.
Yeah.
It was a great move. Like, it was really good race riding just to make sure that batting down was pinned in there. But I would be surprised if they're not trying to get really aggressive and make sure he's right there too. So
yeah. And I think that, one of the things that we talk about sometimes in these races is, yes, you can look at, time form pace projections, and you can look at early fractions, and you can just watch a horse sometimes and go, how much faster are these horses than, each other? One thing you can never quite quantify is intentionality. And I think that's something that's really important with a horse like Batten Down, where you go, well, is he as fast as Fierceness and Dornick? Maybe, maybe not. But there's going to be intentionality with Junior Alvarado. He's going to work his ass off to try to get to the front.
I don't think they're for them. They're like, it comes down to the intent. Like you're saying, you have to think about this as, how can we best win this race? Are we going to be passing these horses and win? We tried that in the Jim Dandy. He loomed up at the top of the lane. He was right in contention with Fierceness and Sierra Leone. That's just not the way he wants to run, at least right now. His best chance of winning this race is, can he get out front or be right there with the leaders, and get where he's battling or just sitting second. But that's the trip that a lot of these horses are going to try to get.
It is. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm very skeptical of Fierceness in this spot.
Me too.
In addition to the on-off, good-bad alternation that he has.
And the distance. Is this even really as far as he wants to go?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think he wants to do 1.25 miles. I think he's 1.8 miles at most. I think he's closer to Life is Good than anything else, where he can do 8 furlong or 9 furlongs under the right conditions, which was what happened last time out in the Jim Dandy or the Florida Derby 2 back. But listen, it was no mistake that in the gallop out, Sierra Leone went right by him. And if you were watching that race, and I watched it a few different times, he was really shortening up those strides, those last few hundred meters or few hundred yards. And Sierra Leone was coming like a freight train, like he always does. So I just don't think I don't think he's capable of doing the 1.25 miles. I think the pace is also just going to melt him down in some ways, not all that dissimilar potentially to what happened in the Kentucky Derby. And all of this sets up perfectly for Sierra Leone, I should say.
It does.
Because this is the race. You could make the argument this is the race he is bred to win. 1.25 miles on the dirt, going 2 turns. Distance is absolutely his friend. And he gets the pace set up. And he gets it in a smaller field where he doesn't have to contend with as much pace or traffic. He doesn't have to deal with as many other horses. He doesn't have to go 8 wide, 9 wide to try to get to make a move for home. So he's going to get a much easier trip than he normally does, and he still gets the right setup. The question is he turning into Tacitus and Zandon a little bit in terms of horses that just come up short and just find a way to not quite win?
And he feels a little better than them. I like
100%.
And it's funny too, because I completely agree. Like there have been a few races now where we're like, maybe he could have won that, or he caused some trouble himself, and he's lugging in, and he's not maybe efficient late. It feels like it's been longer since he last won than it really has. It's only been 3 races, right? Like It feels like he's 0 for his last 9, just kind of the way it's been, because it's been Derby all through the Triple Crown season, and then Jim Dandy. So it's been since April where he got his last victory, but it's only been 3 races. I've got him all over in here. He's, to me, I put him in second. I think he's like the measuring stick horse, the one that they all have to hold off. And actually of the
Yeah.
outside too, like I prefer Dornick, and I was never even a Dornick fan.
Oh yeah,
Like
100%.
I had never been a Dornick fan. I think like a lot of people, especially after the Derby, everyone was like, okay, yep, he was good as a 2-year-old. He's done. But you really look, he does just want to be on the lead. Like he really does just want to battle you. And if he doesn't get close to the lead, then he kind of packs it in. The time they tried to rate him, he wasn't close. Every other time he's been there, even battling, he's around at the end.
Oh, 100%. He's a tough son of a gun to get by. And somebody pointed this out, and I really wish I could remember who. I'll have to go back through my Twitter mentions to find it because I want to give the person credit because they're absolutely right. I remember after he ran in the Fountain of Youth, and if you remember, that was a really scratch depleted field and ended up being a pretty weak race in terms of looking at the rest of the field. And I think that was another reason why people were not that bullish on him going into the Kentucky Derby. But he won that race, but he didn't really do it the way you thought, right? Like, fierceness, when he wins a race, he wins by 13 lengths.
Well, we talked about it. Speakeasy scratched out of that race.
Right.
And then who
Victory
else?
Avenue.
Victory Avenue.
Yeah.
There were 2 or 3 horses
And
leading up to it. And then there was no other speed in that race. It ended up
there wasn't. And you thought, well,
he just cruised.
Yeah, you really thought he should win for fun. And somebody made the point, if you watched him in that race, he's flicking his ears around the entire home stretch. In other words, he's just looking for a horse to run at him, basically. And he said, listen, he's just a different type of horse that he wants to be challenged when he's up on the lead. And he kind of takes it easy and is a little immature when he's not. And so you've seen it the last 2 times out where Mindframe, in both instances, loom up, gets past him, only for Dornick to just keep going and to get right back past him. And so he's such an impressive horse. I like him a lot. Danny Gargan is not having a particularly good Saratoga, 0 for 11, only 1 for 11, even hitting the board at this point. And Louis Saez has had some struggles up here, but obviously has ridden Dornick incredibly well the last few times out. But, again, there's going to be a lot of pace pressure. I think he's the most likely to be able to withstand it and still be standing at the end and really be able to hold on.
But it's still
the 2 horses that I'll mention. Yeah, the 2 horses that I'll mention at a price that I'm interested in are the number 4 Corporate Power and then 6 Honor Marie.
He's my top pick. The 4.
Oh, the 4. Okay.
I'm gonna say this,
go for it.
He's not the most likely winner of this race. I don't think he's the best horse in this race. But the way we've talked this field out, doesn't it seem like there might be a group of 5 horses, then Corporate Power, then Sierra Leone and Honor Marie?
100%. I absolutely agree. I think he potentially sits the perfect trip because unlike Sierra Leone and Honor Marie, now Honor Marie's getting the blinkers added.
So maybe, maybe he's more forward, or maybe that helps him a little bit. But it's hard to project that. Like on paper, he looks like he's right in between those horses.
Yeah, he's going to get the jump. He's going to get the first crack as opposed to Sierra Leone and Honor Marie, who are going to be having to come from well back. And Shug McGaughey's won this race 4 times. He knows how to win, and we've talked about this many times. Shug is also a cautious trainer. He doesn't put his horses in spots where he doesn't think they can win. He was really impressive, I thought, last time out. Showed a little bit of immaturity in the stretch, but still ran up against Unmatched Wisdom, who I think is a very, very good horse, but I just don't know if this race sets up very well for him. And Shug's got him firing off bullets, coming into this race. So he looks very live in this spot at 15-1. I think he just, as the cool kids say, he kind of trips out in some way and just gets the right trip. And Honor Marie, I'm just interested to see what impact the blinkers have. And this is another horse that can really close. And, if he just sits a little bit closer, maybe that has the necessary impact to get him over the hump. But I think at 20-1 is a very reasonable horse to include in something like a trifecta.
And races don't always play out where this is how everybody's running style is. They all show those running styles. And then, the speed horses show speed, the closers drop back, and it works out that way. It doesn't. Sometimes there'll be a particular group of 8 horses, and horses adapt differently to what's going on in that race. And they show different kind of running styles, or maybe they're just the best of that group, or they end up getting shuffled back and something else happens. It doesn't always work that way. But the 3 horses that are just kind of obviously stand out as the ones that we feel like are going to be passing horses late? Just answering that question are Corporate Power, Honor Marie, and Sierra Leone. Like those are the ones we know that they can pass horses. And they're the really interesting ones to me.
Yeah, and Corporate Power has done nothing but continue to improve really throughout his career. I mean, he ran fourth in debut, but ran actually in that race against Speakeasy and Victory Avenue that we were talking about. And it was sprinting, and it's also Shug, who never gets horses ready first time out. I just saw a horse that cost $1.3 million that finished dead last. That was one of his in a race up here last week. And guess what? That horse is going to be a monster eventually. But Shug just has no desire of getting horses ready for a 6 furlong or 7 furlong sprint in debut. And so, the horse wins next time out, going a mile and an eighth. And, oh, by the way, beats Batten Down in that race. And then wins the Sir Barton and, runs second in the Curlin. I don't know. This horse, again, at 15-1, at any price point, a certain horse is interesting. And at 15-1, I think this horse is real interesting, considering the trip and the way that things are going to potentially play out.
Yeah. I mean, if we're writing down or we're going to rank the horses throughout the year who we think the best are going to be or the most accomplished, it's not always like that. It just sometimes you look at a race and go, who is going to get the best trip? I'm definitely going to use them just in case, because there are versions of this race where it is run, like we said, where there are 5 horses probably in a grouping of like 3 by 2 early, kind of looking around for position. None of them really that far away from each other. And then you have sort of a gap of a few lengths and Corporate Power, and then maybe a gap of another few lengths and the 2 deep closers. And he could at least be passing a few of those horses in that early pack. They're going to drop back. Can, in that same sense, he get the jump on the deep closers who maybe get into a little bit of traffic? Like, you talk yourself into horses getting trips. He's one that I did here with Corporate Power.
And let me just say, because we haven't talked about her much, but let me just say about Torpedo Anna this. She is ready to go.
Yep.
I've been around her. I've seen her the last couple of weeks. She is cranked up for this race. I mean, Ken McPeak has done a great job of getting her ready. She is physically so much more developed than the other fillies that we saw in the Alabama last week. She is ears pricked, muscles rippling. I just saw her paddock schooling on Sunday. They went to adjust her blanket and her whole body just puffed up thinking she was about to start racing. I mean, she really is ready to go. The last workout was particularly impressive. Going 59-4 and 5 furlongs under an absolute stranglehold. And she is one who, is she good enough? We're going to find out on Saturday, but Ken's going to have her absolutely ready, and she's going to run her race. I know that. And I think at the top of the stretch, she's still going to be in the mix. And she's a really, really good filly. And I think she's got maybe a better chance than some people are giving her, but it's not a gimmick. That she's here. She absolutely deserves to be in this spot.
Yeah, the versatility could help her. Absolutely. That's a positive. Yeah. We really don't know what her ceiling is because in 6 of her races, she hasn't been tested.
Right.
She hasn't even been pushed or gotten close to being, competitive in those races. Now, the knocks would be, she's going to have to go a mile and a quarter. She could get a brutal trip if a lot of those speeds go and she's down on the inside and there's 3 horses to her outside, all just at least making her work really, really hard early on. And this is there are probably 5 or 6 horses in here better than any horse she's ever faced.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing is like the caliber of the fillies that she's been beating, I think are a little bit of a question mark.
It's funny because we thought the Oaks was a monster race, and maybe it was. Maybe she is just that good where she's that much better than them. We just haven't seen those horses that we were really excited about kind of be able to come back and either turn the tables on her or get their big wins yet, like Candied or Just FYI or Leslie's Rose. They haven't really stepped forward. We did see Power Squeeze get that win, but some of the horses behind her have been probably a little disappointing in their next few starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a fair point to make. And one of the things I will say to your initial point, I went back and looked at all of her previous races, and I will say Brian Hernandez Jr. is rarely asking her for much at the end of these races.
Oh, yeah.
He is kind of just swinging the crop at her eyes to keep her focused and to keep her straight. And what is really telling to me is he gives her one tap usually every single race. He just goes, smacks her once, and man, she responds immediately. She's not a push button horse, but she's got an extra gear that one tap and that's all you need. And she goes, and then he just hand rides her the rest of the way. And so to that point, I don't know what it's going to be like to see her all out. We've not really seen her all out to this point. I always remember the great call from Tom Durkin in the Woodward, Calvin Burrell imploring his filly.
Yeah.
We've not seen Brian Hernandez Jr. implore Torpedo Anna once. And so it's going to be really interesting to see, when she's going to be in a dogfight here at the top of the stretch. And, does she have another gear that we just maybe haven't even seen yet? And I think that's really interesting to tell. And listen, she's going to have a ton of supporters. She's going to take a ton of money. If you're against her, it's a good thing because it means everybody else is going to be a better price. And if you're for her, this is as good a price as you're going to get, because if she runs against the Phillies, she'll be 1-9. So it's the best of both worlds from a betting standpoint.
And then from just a pure fan standpoint and from people watching, this is what we need. People are starting to know these names of these horses, right? Because we've seen Fierceness now. He's a horse that we remember from last year, and he ran in the Derby, and we know him especially in New York. Dornick, we know Dornick. He was good last year, a graded stakes winner. He ran in the Derby. He was in the Belmont, and now he's won back-to-back races. He's been in the Bluegrass. He's been in a bunch of big races. Even a horse like Honor Marie was in the Louisiana Derby, the Kentucky Derby, and the Belmont. People know these horses now. It sounds kind of silly, but when you go and I go and talk to people about this race for this weekend, and I preview it for radio shows and other stuff, when you're talking to people who don't know as much about racing, they know these horses. They actually remember them. And that's a really positive thing. So you get Sierra Leone, you get Dornick, you get Fierceness. They have been three of the absolute top of this age group from the very beginning of their racing careers. All three of them have been probably in that top 5 conversation. Then you've got a brand new wild card horse like Unmatched Wisdom, who's 3 for 3, could be any kind, and they all have to face the best of the fillies. It's about as good from a storyline standpoint and then from a competitive gambling standpoint as you really could have asked for this race. Honestly, like, who's not here? Maybe we wanted Mindframe. He got hurt. What can you do, right? Sees the gray because Mindframe's not going to be in here. He's going to try to go maybe get a little bit of a softer spot. That's totally understandable. This is the best horses right now in the best form, all trying to be the top 3-year-old.
100%. No, it's a great storyline. You have the Jason Worth angle with Dornick that's really attracted a lot of people. Obviously, the filly running against the boys is just going to bring in so many casual fans as well. And it's going to be a great race. It's a great betting race. You could tell just by the way David set the morning line. Listen, Dornick 5-2, Torpedo Anna and Fierceness 3-1, Sierra Leone 7-2. I mean, very strong. Who knows who's going to actually be the post-time favorite between those 4? Because I could make an argument for all of them. So it's going to be interesting.
I saw earlier on social media a very sharp tweet that said she could be the first filly since 1915 to win the Travers. That was at Fail to Menace I was following over on Twitter. So I saw that tweet from Maddie. As we finish up, talk to us about where we can follow you there, NYRA Bets, everything you've got a plug coming up, where else we can hear more of you. The floor is yours.
No, I appreciate it, man. Yes, you can find me on X at Failed to Menace, or you can follow all my content on X at Naira Bets. And if you go to Naira Bets YouTube, which is a channel we just started, we have a lot of great race previews this week. I'm joined by Acacia Clement. I keep wanting to call her Acacia Courtney because that's how I originally knew her. But Acacia Clement is going to join me to preview the Personal Ensign, which is a banger of a race on Friday, and the Sword Dancer, which we talked about. And then I'm going to be on Capping the Card. And we're going to have that on the Naira Bets YouTube, and David Aragona is going to join me. We're going to go through all 14 races on the card, give you our top pick, top value play. We have Travers Day spotlight videos on each of the 8 runners. We got a lot of different content for you up here on the website. So go to Naira Bets, nairabets.com. You can get all this content all free. And like I said, that's where you can get all of our stuff. And Gino, man, I appreciate you having me on. Every time I think I'm working hard, I take a look over at you and I realize I could be doing a lot more.
Yeah, but the thing is with you, and I know it's the same thing with me too, we like it like this. You know what I mean?
No, I love it like this.
So when you find the stuff that you enjoy to do, you enjoy doing when it's racing or sports or whatever it is, like we like these busy, and it's nice when you can take a little break at the end of the week or at the end of the long day sometimes. But yeah, this is the fun stuff right now. And I'm always very excited when we get the chance to talk. And let's, if we don't before then, I think September 28th is like the next really big New York one after next weekend. So that's where you have like Belmont and Aqueduct, the Joe Hirsch, the Pilgrim, the Vosburg, the Woodward. Maybe that's a day where we link back up and we look at those races.
Absolutely, man. Love it and look forward to it.
Matt DeSantis, always one of the sharper guys out there, one of the nicer, friendlier people you will meet. If you ever need any help, if you ever have any questions about anything going on with the New York racing, make sure to get in touch with Matt. He will help you out. And you'll hear Matt often talking races with me. We're always following Matt. We're always listening to the great analysis and just doing such a great job over at NYRA Bet. So thanks so much, everyone, for hanging out. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you can subscribe to the channel, that'll be super helpful. And if you want to toss in the comments, let us know some of your plays on Saturday over at Saratoga, races 9 through 13. Are you with us in the Travers? You think it's going to set up for horses off the pace, or maybe you like someone else to steal that race on the front end? Let's hear from you. And as we say goodbye, we hear from Joey Cleveland.